Well, good
And
morning,
we are-
reset. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to round 2 of the mock competitions. Congratulations to everyone for putting in the hard work and being on a Saturday morning to do this. We know there's going to be potentially technical issues. We will get through it. I just want to remind everyone, you saw the acknowledgement. This is being recorded, and you've acknowledged the consent to be recorded by participating in the event. I want to remind you, no recesses will be allowed unless there's an emergency issue. If so, let me know. I also want to remind everyone of rules of professionalism. And even though you are on Zoom, we can see you. So please be respectful to other people when they are presenting. And let's just keep that in mind as we go through this. Any disputes regarding an issue with the competition must be reported in accordance with the competition rules. The other issue is you both have timers, both teams have timers. We are going to strictly enforce those time limits. If you run out of time, I'm going to stop you. So please be reminded of that. Make sure that, I know we're in different locations, but none of your coaches can be seated in the jury box or the virtual jury box as it is. And with that, Team Tulip, are you ready to begin? So Team Tulip, we can hear somebody. We're going to have one representative. And if you can turn on your video as well, please.
We are calling in from a phone. Are you able to hear us?
We can. That is much better. Thank you. And so Team Tulip, are you prepared to begin?
Yes, we are.
Team Rose, are you prepared to begin?
Yes, Your Honor.
Team Tulip, will you please introduce the attorneys and your witnesses?
One more time.
Will you please introduce the attorneys and the witnesses?
My name is Sarah Harani. I'm an attorney, and I will be conducting an opening, directing Dakota Weirs and crossing Skylar Weirs.
My name is Malia Walker. I will be directing Casey Rogers and crossing Blake John Court, as well as closing for the plaintiff.
My name is Brandon Lee. I will be crossing Devin Williams and directing passengers.
And Team Tulip, are you on one phone that you're passing back and forth?
Yeah. We are.
Please make sure that the person who is speaking is holding the phone. Otherwise, it's hard for us to hear.
Okay.
Tulip witnesses.
All right.
My name is Yusuf Zuhu. I will be playing Dakota Weirs.
My name is Norman, and I'm playing Carson Weirs.
My name is Luis Martinez, and I'll be playing Dr. Casey Rogers.
Thank you. And then as a reminder for the witnesses, once it is your turn to testify, let's have the testifying witness, the one that is closest to the camera. We can hear, when you're close to the camera, we can hear you just fine. Team Rose, please introduce the attorneys and your witnesses.
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel and members of the jury. My name is Leah Dino, and I will be conducting the direct examination of Skylar Weirs, the cross-examination of Dakota Weirs, and delivering the closing arguments. At this time, may my co-counsel please introduce themselves.
Mr. Carbone, we have lost your audio. Or Ms. Carbone, sorry. We have no audio. Do you want to try to call in on a phone?
Yes, give us like 1 minute and we're gonna figure this out. So sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, so she's just going to transition to the call-in option really quickly.
Not a problem. While we are waiting for them to address their audio issue, just as a heads up, in a few minutes, I will be swearing in the team members, then I will be swearing in the witnesses, and then the scoring panelists. When I do that, I will ask that all of the team members come on video for that swearing in. Then I'll ask that all the witnesses come on video for the swearing in, and then I will ask that all the panelists come on video for swearing in. While we are waiting for attorneys for the Rose team to address their audio issue, let's go ahead and have the witnesses for the Rose team sign on and introduce yourselves, please.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Maisie Bogich, and I am Skylar Weirs.
Good morning. My name is Patrick Shack, and I am Blake Doncourt.
My name is Max Obrecht, and I am Dr. Devin Williams.
Thank you. Again, I'm trying to be respectful of time since we are still looking at some attorney issues. Let's go ahead and have all of the witnesses turn on their cameras and let's get the witnesses sworn in. Okay, so witnesses, please raise your right hand. Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? Thank you, witnesses. Scoring panelists, if you can please sign on, turn on your cameras. Scoring panelists, please raise your right hands. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Dino, how's it going over there?
Yeah, so we can't figure out a way to get her audio connected. So if it's okay with you, Your Honor, we'd like to have her just share my computer or Annika Obrecht's computer.
Absolutely fine.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like us to proceed with our introductions?
Yes, please. We've gone through your witnesses. I don't know if you heard that, just in the matter of time.
Thank you. Again, my name is Leah Dino. I'll be conducting the direct examination of Skylar Weirs, the cross-examination of Dakota Weirs, and delivering the closing arguments.
My name is Carmela Carboni, and I will be conducting the direct examination of Blake Doncourt and the cross-examination of Carson Durst.
Thank you. For the team members, plaintiffs and defense counsel, please try to get on, if you can, respectfully and social distancing, share a camera and raise your right hand. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes,
Yes,
Your
Your
Honor.
Honor.
All right, thank you. Plaintiff, opening statement, please.
Good morning, members of the jury, members of the council, and Your Honor. Today's case is about profits over people. Now, today we have the burden of proof by preponderance of the evidence to demonstrate three things: causation, negligence, and damages. My client, Dakota Weir, testifies to his damages today. Today you will learn that Mr. Weir's life was taken from him by non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Now, Mr. Weir was on his way to become an accomplished pianist. He performed at recitals in which people from all over his town would come watch him. He won various awards and even earned a scholarship to the Juilliard, one of, if not the most prestigious music schools in the entire United States. Now, aside from his career as a pianist, Mr. Weir was an active member of his community. He was an exemplary high school student. He was a member of the National Honor Society, and he volunteered. He even took up a landscaping job just to make some extra money. Now, at that job, his responsibility was to spread seed and fertilizer, and he worked very closely with Lush Fertilizer. But as a result, Mr. Weir has suffered horrible damages. His entire body is in pain. He's no longer able to sit at a bench and play the piano because it hurts him to do so. He's no longer able to pursue his dreams. He's no longer able to live his life. Now, Dr. Casey Rogers will testify to causation. You'll hear from Dr. Casey Rogers how he conducted a test on 3 different groups of people, ranging from people with no exposure to Drufo, the main bonding agent in Lush Fertilizer, to people with prolonged exposure to Drufo. You will learn how from this experiment, he concluded that Drufo is carcinogenic, meaning that Drufo causes cancer. Now, his findings are further backed up by Carson Durst, who is a former product engineer at Lush Fertilizer. As part of his job, Carson Durst researched Drufo. He looked at studies to ensure that Drufo was safe, but one of those studies raised a red flag. He learned that Drufo was carcinogenic, at least in rats. Now, when that study was brought to the attention of the higher management at Lush Fertilizer, you will hear that it was completely swept under the rug, that Carson Durst was shunned out of his company for taking these concerns seriously. He'll explain that there was an option to bake the fertilizer, which would eliminate any potential harm, but you won't hear that that step was taken. Blake Doncourt, the CEO of Lush Fertilizer himself, will tell you that he decided not to bake the fertilizer because he needed the extra money, because he values the profits over people, over actual lives. Now, the defense will call Skylar Weir and Devin Williams to the stand. Skylar Weir is no more than a self-proclaimed investigative journalist who is in no way qualified to make any claim about the safety of Drufo. Dr. Devin Williams will explain that he has a financial bias in this case, that he is supporting a company that he works for, that he needs the trial to be in his favor in order to keep his job. Now, we request that today you hold Lush Fertilizer liable and award Mr. Weir for the damages that he has suffered. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Defense opening.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning. May it please the court. My name is Annika Obrecht, and along with my co-counsel, I represent the defendant, Lush Fertilizer. The story you just heard is a tragic one. It's tragic when anyone gets cancer, particularly someone as young as Dakota Weir. But plaintiff's counsel isn't telling you the whole story. This isn't a case about profits over people. It's a case about Dakota Weir trying to find the defendant with the deepest pockets. The plaintiff claims Lush Fertilizer was negligent in failing to warn its users about the dangers of Drufo, a bonding agent, and its fertilizer. As previously stated, they will have to prove their claim by a preponderance of the evidence, which means more likely than not. The plaintiff will not be able to meet this burden. Lush Fertilizer didn't and couldn't know that Lush Fertilizer was dangerous to humans because it isn't. Lush Fertilizer was formed in 2000 by Blake Doncourt. Mr. Doncourt will talk about how hard he worked to turn Lush Fertilizer into one of the largest fertilizer suppliers in the world. He will tell you about his charitable contributions and the products he created. Drufo is actually a revolutionary chemical that leads to the amount of fertilizer that means to less fertilizer needing to be applied. Less fertilizer means less nitrogen, which is good for the environment and, more importantly, for people. You will hear Lush did extensive research and conducted studies on the safety of Drufo. You will hear more about those studies from Dr. Devin Williams, the head of Lush's Research and Development Labs. He will tell you that there is no evidence that there is a causal link between Drufo and cancer. Finally, the defense will call Skylar Weirs the plaintiff's own twin sister. She is an investigative reporter who has done extensive research on the potential risks of Drufo. She could not locate any study that proved with any level of certainty that Drufo there is evidence establishing a causal link between Drufo and cancer. Even though that she is testifying against her sister, she believes she must stand up for the truth. Dakota Weirs will testify about their summer job at a local company called Haven Landscaping. He will admit that Haven let a 14-year-old boy work with pesticides and harsh chemicals. They also let their employees ignore safety recommendations on wearing masks and protective clothing. So why isn't Haven being sued? The evidence will show that Haven Landscaping is a small local company, while Lush makes millions of dollars. That's not the only ulterior motive in this case. The plaintiff will call Carson Durst. You will hear Carson Durst is a disgruntled former employee and family friend of the Doncourts with an axe to grind. He was fired for poor performance and went to work for Lush's competitor. While she will try to suggest otherwise, she has no personal knowledge of any studies showing a statistical increased risk of cancer from exposure to Drufo. The plaintiff will call Casey Rogers as an expert. Dr. Rogers will admit he wants you to favor the plaintiff because that may mean more lawsuits, and more lawsuits mean more opportunities for him to be hired. And the study that Dr. Rogers conducted lacks substance. He compared users of fertilizers to non-users, but failed to measure any risks specific to Drufo. You will see that Lush put a warning label on its products recommending that users wear a mask and protective clothing like long sleeves and pants. Reasonable, simple precautions. The problem is that Dakota Weirs ignored that warning. Dakota Weirs will admit he was supposed to use protective clothing and a mask, but he didn't want to. He ignored the recommendations. He thought it was too hot to wear long sleeves. It may be uncomfortable to put blame on someone who is sick, but the evidence will prove the plaintiff did not act reasonably. At the end of the case, the court will instruct you about the law you must apply. You will hear the plaintiff must prove by a preponderance of the evidence that Lush failed to act reasonably and take reasonable care to warn its users. The critical word is reasonable. The evidence will show Lush acted reasonably at every step based on the science available to it. Dakota Weirs and Haven Landscaping did not. Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel. Counsel, apologies. I jumped into opening statements and did not allow you the opportunity to raise any preliminary matters. Does either side have any preliminary matters that they would like the court to hear before we call the first witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Counsel.
Hello. On the topic of preliminary matters, could we verify that the jury has a copy of the exhibits so that we don't have to keep a copy shared on screen for them?
Yes. Elizabeth, can you confirm that the exhibits will be available electronically?
I believe each team will need to confirm the availability of their exhibits. and scoring panelists, please let us know if you do not have a copy of the exhibits.
So just to
sorry.
Yes, sorry, some of the glitches of a mock trial. So all panelists, did you receive a copy of the exhibits? I believe that the attorneys will be doing a share screen during presentation, but just to confirm that you obtain copies of the exhibits in advance. We're just waiting for Ms. Rivera to confirm that she received copies of the exhibits.
She confirmed via direct message to me just now.
Okay, wonderful. Yes, thank you. All of the jury members have received copies of the exhibits.
Okay, that was just in case we can't share screen for some technical issues. We also have a set of stipulated facts that we would like to admit to the court and publish to the jury. I'm going to read them out now. So the first stipulated fact is that the signatures on the witness statements and all other documents are authentic. The second one is that the chain of custody for evidence is not in dispute. So we would like to admit those two stipulated facts to the court and publish them to the jury, Your Honor.
Any objections, Ms. Dino?
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay, so admitted.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other preliminary matters from the plaintiff?
No, Your Honor.
Any preliminary matters from defense?
I'd just like to confirm the matter of screen sharing the exhibits. So we're going to not screen share them until they've been admitted into evidence. Is that clear? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further preliminary matters.
Plaintiff, are you ready to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
The plaintiff would like to call Dakota Weir to the stand. Good morning, Mr. Weir.
Good morning.
Could you please state your full name and spell out your last for the record?
And we just lost audio on the witness. And so I don't know if we need to pause and there we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Could you please state your full name and spell out your last for the record?
Yes, my name is Dakota Weirs, W-E-I-R-S.
So, Mr. Weirs, are you currently in school?
Not currently.
Why not?
Ever since I got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, I haven't really been able to do anything.
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation.
I'm going to overrule and allow it. This is preliminary.
May I continue?
Yes, you may.
Okay.
All right. And did you at least attend high school?
Yes, I graduated from high school.
So what kinds of things did you do in high school?
During high school, I was really active. I was a member of the National Honor Society and was president of my school student government.
So, did you get accepted into a college?
Yeah, since I was a pianist, I got accepted into Juilliard with a full-ride scholarship.
And are you still planning on attending Juilliard?
Unfortunately not. My non-Hodgkin's lymphoma already takes a toll on me enough just sitting around the house. I could only dream of actually attending Juilliard.
Mr. Weirs, you mentioned that you play the piano. How long have you been playing for?
I've been playing pretty much my whole life. I remember my grandfather who introduced me to it.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Counsel, will you address the objection on relevance?
Your Honor, this is relevant as I am laying foundation on Mr. Weirs' character and his personal life.
On his character or his personal life? I'm sorry, which was that?
Personal life.
Any further reply?
Yes, Your Honor. Under Rule 401, testimony is not relevant if it does not make a fact more probable. I don't see the fact that Mr. Weirs' history with his grandfather playing piano, I don't see the fact that that makes more probable.
I'm going to overrule the objection because I believe it goes to damages. You may proceed.
All right, and Mr. Weirs, you mentioned that you had a close relationship with your grandfather. How was your relationship like with the rest of your family?
Before I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, I never really had the stereotypical close family relationship. Me and my twin Skylar, we weren't exactly close and just lived my life.
Well, are you aware that your twin Skylar is testifying here against you today?
Fortunately, I'm painfully aware of the fact.
All right, well, Mr. Weirs, I'd like to talk a little bit about it now.
Okay.
So what are some symptoms of your illness?
Some symptoms of my illness. I have chest pains, honestly pains all over my body, swollen lymph nodes, swollen abdomen. I'm constantly fatigued, even shortness of breath.
And when did you start noticing those symptoms?
I started noticing those symptoms around a year ago while I was working at Haven Landscaping. I just remember not being able to do the things I could, and I would get really tired really fast.
And how long had you been working at Haven Landscaping?
I had been working at Haven Landscaping ever since I was 14.
And what did you do there?
While I worked, I was in charge of seeding and fertilizing.
And did you ever work with Lush fertilizer?
Yes, since I was in charge of fertilizing and seeding, I used Lush fertilizer all the time.
And what were you using it on?
I used it on lawns, golf courses, shopping malls, gardens, things like that.
All right, Mr. Weirs, did you ever read the packaging label?
I've never really read it per se, but I have seen it.
Have you seen the packaging label?
Yes.
Okay. If I were to show you, all right. If I were to show you a copy of that label today, would you be able to recognize it?
Yeah, I would be able to recognize it. Yes.
All right. Let the record reflect that I'm showing the mark as Exhibit 1. All right, Ms. Ruiz, do you currently have a copy of Exhibit 1 in front of you?
Just give me a second. Yes, I do.
And do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes, this is the packaging on Lush fertilizer products.
All right, and would you say that this is a fair and accurate copy of that label?
I would say that.
Your Honor, I'd like to admit Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. We object to hearsay.
Do you have a response?
Your Honor, we are not using this to assert the truth of the matter. We're using it to establish how it has affected Mr. Weirs.
I would typically sustain the objection, but for the purposes of the mock trial competition, I am going to allow the admittance of Exhibit 1.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. Weirs, could you please read out the ingredients?
Okay. The active ingredients are drufo, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, and iron.
All right, so what makes Lush fertilizer different?
Objection, Your Honor. In preliminary matters, we confirmed that once an exhibit was entered, it would be screen shared.
Okay, let's do a quick pause on the timing to address this issue, because I do think we've had some technical issues. Plaintiff's counsel, do you have the ability to do a screen share of this exhibit?
We currently do not.
Okay. I understand your objection, Ms. Dino, but we have to be flexible when we're dealing with some connectivity issues. Since all of the panelists, are AKA our jury members and myself do have a copy, I'm going to overrule that objection. We can go back on the time. Thank you.
All right. To reiterate my previous question, Mr. Ruse, what makes Lush fertilizer different than its counterparts?
I believe it's because Lush fertilizer contains trufo.
All right. And are there any warnings on the label?
There are no warnings. There are only user safety recommendations.
And what do those recommend?
I can read it out. It says, as with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. Use of a respirator or N95 mask is recommended. Follow manufacturer's instructions for cleaning / maintaining personal protective equipment. Users should wash hands before and after use of this product.
All right. And did you ever wear any protective gear?
I worked mainly during the summers. It was really hot. My boss never truly enforced any use of protective gear, and none of my colleagues and peers ever wore anything, so I didn't wear it.
Right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Weirs. You worked for Haven Landscaping for 4 years, correct?
Yes.
You started at age 14.
Yes.
And your job was to spread seed and fertilizer.
Yes.
And while you're spreading the seed and fertilizer, you like to feel the wind on your face, right?
I would, yes.
And in your eyes, right?
Yes.
Mr. Weirs, you knew you were supposed to cover your face when working with the chemicals, correct?
I did know, yes.
But you didn't do that, did you?
I mean, there's no, on the labeling, there's no mention of any danger regarding this product. I thought it was safe.
Didn't you just testify that there were recommendations to wear safety gear?
Yes, but there are no warnings talking about the dangers of this product.
Mr. Weirs, you knew you were supposed to wear long sleeves, pants, and gloves when working with these chemicals, correct?
Yes.
But you didn't do that either.
Like I said, it's really hot. Nothing was truly enforced, and like I said, there's no danger.
If you didn't read a label that told you to wear protective gear, then you wouldn't have read a label that warned you about carcinogenic effects, right?
Excuse me? I didn't catch that.
If you didn't read the label that told you to wear protective gear, then that probably means you wouldn't have read a label warning you of carcinogenic effects, correct?
There is no label warning of carcinogenic, any dangers of carcinogenic effects.
Moving on, you testified that the owners of Haven and the other employees weren't wearing protective gear.
The owner, my boss, never enforced the use of protective gear often. And
right. But Mr. Weirs, you aren't suing Haven Landscaping, right?
No, I'm suing Lush Fertilizer.
Right. You're not suing Haven because their pockets aren't deep enough for you.
I'm suing Lush Fertilizer because their product made me sick.
You're suing Lush Fertilizer for emotional damages, correct?
Not emotional damages, physical damages. I believe Lush Fertilizer caused my non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
What's the exact amount you're suing for?
I'm not aware of that.
Moving on, you first learned about Drufo through a TV news segment, correct?
Yes.
Were the sources of that news segment ever confirmed for their credibility?
I don't believe so.
Now, let's look at Lush Fertilizer's actual product. Can you please turn your attention to Exhibit 1?
Yes.
You said that this is the same label that was on Lush Fertilizer from when you worked there, correct?
Yes, it's the same label.
You testified that there weren't any warnings about long-term exposure, correct?
There are no warnings talking about any danger of use with the products other than eye irritation.
Well, let's look at the warnings that are on this label. It says, as with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. You read that?
Yes.
You didn't do that, did you?
As I explained before, it was summer, it wasn't enforced, and I thought it was safe.
Right, it wasn't enforced by Haven Landscaping again.
It wasn't enforced by Lush or Haven Landscaping. I mean, by Haven Landscaping, my bad.
The label says use of a respirator or N95 mask is recommended. Do you read that?
Yes,
You also didn't do that.
as I explained many times, there's no saying of what could have happened to me using this product, not listening to those recommendations. You know, there's no saying that it would destroy my life.
Mr. Weirs, you would consider yourself a smart kid, correct?
I guess so, yes.
You get good grades?
Yes.
You had to have known that not wearing personal protective equipment was dangerous.
It's recommendations. Like the only thing talking about danger is eye irritation. There's nothing talking about cancer, the destruction of my entire life.
Now, Mr. Weirs, let's talk about your time at Haven. When you first started working, you were too young to work with the machinery, correct?
Yes.
And the owners of Haven allowed a 14-year-old boy to work with dangerous chemicals instead of dangerous machinery?
Yes.
Your bosses didn't require you to wear protective clothing.
They told us to wear protective clothing.
But they didn't require you to.
Excuse me?
They didn't require you to.
They didn't necessarily enforce it, so I guess you could say so.
And not just you, they didn't enforce it on any of the employees at Haven Landscaping, correct?
I believe so, yes.
They let teenagers decide what was safe.
I mean, how would they know about things that could have happened using this product? Like, there's no warning talking about dangers.
As a landscaping company, they should have known that the products they were using would cause dangerous side effects, correct?
But the product Lush Fertilizer says nothing about that.
Let's talk about your damages. You claim that your life is all but over, right?
Excuse me?
You claim that your life is all but over.
Yes.
You say you can't play piano or go to school.
Yeah, I can't.
Wait, your doctors haven't given up hope, correct?
I mean, I'm still taking medications and trying to live my life, but
Your doctors haven't given up hope, correct?
yes.
You may be able to play the piano, go to work and school in the future, correct?
I mean, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma takes off decades of my life.
That wasn't my question. You might be able to do those things in the future, correct?
I mean, maybe.
No doctor or other expert has ever opinioned that you won't.
But from personal experience, right now I can't even, sit on the bench playing piano. My fingers hurt. Everything hurts.
Mr. Weirs, right now you're just speculating that you're not going to get better.
If you were in my situation.
But Mr. Weirs, I'm not in your situation. I'm asking you right now. You're speculating that you're not going to get better.
I mean, it's hard to have a belief that I'm going to get better when all that's happening is I'm getting worse.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Briefly, Your Honor. And Mr. Weirs, did you ever wear any long clothing while working with Lush Fertilizer?
I never wore long clothing.
And why didn't you ever wear any long clothing?
The label says nothing about any dangers using the product. It says nothing about how it would cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It says nothing about how I would never be able to use my hands again. It says nothing about the fact that it would destroy my life and take everything away from me.
No further questions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Weirs, you may step down. Plaintiffs, are you ready to call your next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff would like to call Carson Durst to the stand.
Mr. Durst, as you take the stand, I want to remind you that you have already been sworn in.
Good evening, Ms. Durst. Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the court?
We do not have audio for your witness.
Sorry, Your Honor. Carson Durst, D-U-R-S-T.
All right. And where did you go to school?
I went to school at Arizona State University.
All right. And what do you currently do for a living?
I currently work at Terrace Greenery as lead product and lead research and development team. Sorry.
And can you tell me about how you got that job?
Yes, I applied there in around December in 2006, and it was a little bit before I was fired by Lush Fertilizer.
How long did you work for Lush Fertilizer?
I worked for Lush Fertilizer for about a year-ish.
And how did you attain that job? How did you start at Lush Fertilizer?
Yes, I did not have luck finding a job right out of college. So I was very close with Blake Doncourt's son, Charles Doncourt. And Charles Doncourt said that there was an internship at Lush Fertilizer and that he would put in a word for me so that I can have a chance at getting a job. And I did.
And what did you do in Lush Fertilizer? What was your position?
Yes, I was on the team for research and development.
Okay, and can you tell me a little more about that? How long were you on it?
Yes, basically I helped the team research chemical compounds of Drufo.
Okay. Could you tell me about your research?
Yes, I can. So when I was researching Drufo and I came across something that caught my eye, and yeah.
You mentioned you were researching Drufo. Can you tell me what that is?
Yes, Drufo is a bonding agent in Lush Fertilizer, and it's a safer way. It's way safer for the environment.
So what have you researched about Drufo?
Whether or not it was carcinogenic in humans.
All right. And did you review any studies?
Yes, I did. I found a English study saying that Drufo could be carcinogenic in rats.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to show Exhibit 4 and confirm that everyone has a copy of Exhibit 4 with them. My apologies, Exhibit 3. Ms. Durst, do you have a copy of Exhibit 3?
Currently not on me, sorry.
Let me know once you have it.
Let me pause again for a moment. This is a little unusual, but perhaps defense counsel would be kind enough, since they have the ability, to screen share Exhibit 3.
Yes,
That
Your
would be
Honor.
perfect.
Sorry, Your Honor, you're on mute.
Thank you, Team Rose. We can restart the clock.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Durst, what are we looking at?
We're looking at a research that I found, an English research that I found that caught my eye.
And what did this research paper research?
This is researching whether or not C3NO9P is one of the compounds in Drufo are carcinogenic in rats.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to admit Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Defense objects on hearsay.
Reply.
Your Honor, we are not presenting this document for the truth of the matter, rather for the effect it had on the witness. And by definition, hearsay is admitting something for the truth of the matter, which we are not doing here.
I'm going to sustain the objection. I don't believe sufficient foundation has been laid for this witness to testify further regarding it.
All right. Moving on, misters. So you mentioned you did research. Were there any other studies that you reviewed on Drufo?
Can you repeat that, please? I can't really hear you.
So were there any other studies regarding Drufo that you researched?
Not that I can recall.
Okay. In your research team, how did your research team research things together as a team? What did you guys do?
Basically, when we found something that we thought was interesting, we'd write it in our notebook, and Jerry Langley would take our notebooks and compile them into a big report that we would review.
Who is Jerry Langley?
My supervisor.
All right. And you said you compiled everything into a report. Where did that report go?
It goes to the head, and then the head of Jerry Langley. And once we do, we usually have a meeting about it.
Right. Okay. And how did that report get sent up to upper management?
Through email, usually through an email.
Okay. And would you recognize a copy of any of those emails if I were to show one to you today?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, I'll let the record reflect that I'm showing a copy of Exhibit 4.
So noted. Thank you, Team Rose.
Again, Mr. What are we looking at?
An email that was sent to me and my colleagues.
Sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't hear.
An email from Jerry Langley that was sent to me and my colleagues.
All right, perfect. And could you tell me, sorry, I have the email right here. Sorry, can I just confirm that everyone has a copy of the email with them?
Yes, you may confirm that the jury and the court has a copy of Exhibit 4.
All right. Okay, sorry, I'm just going to repeat my previous question. So, Mr. what are we looking at?
An email that was sent by Jerry Langley to me and my colleagues.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, I would like to admit Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, to authenticity, hearsay, and in addition, the publication of this document would violate a confidentiality agreement signed by Carson Durst and Lush Fertilizer.
Plaintiff, your response?
So, to the hearsay objection, this is a party opponent statement, so it is not hearsay. And the confidentiality agreement was disputed in court with Durst with Ms. Durst and Lush Fertilizer, which not in this case, but in a separate case.
I'm going to allow it. Exhibit 4 is admitted.
All right, Ms. Durst, could you read, my apologies. So could you read who this document was from?
Can you please zoom in a little bit? I can't really see.
Okay. And could you read the second, on the second line of who this was to, could you read the first name?
Yes, Blake Doncourt.
And who is Blake Doncourt?
CEO and founder of Lush Fertilizer.
Okay. And could you also read the first sentence of paragraph 2 for me?
Yes, following our lab's June Truffaut study, concerns have arisen regarding generalized findings of potential carcinogenic qualities identified in samples products during an early period in the year.
Perfect. And could you just simplify that? What does that mean?
Basically saying that in June we did find findings that Truffaut could potentially be carcinogenic.
And what was the result of this email?
It was dismissed.
So after this email was sent out, what happened? Did anything happen?
Nothing, but I did go to Blake Donkart to tell him about my concerns about this, and he just dismissed it.
All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross.
Good morning, Misters.
Good morning.
You graduated from college, right?
That's correct.
Then you couldn't find a job.
Correct.
Blake Donacourt had to pull some strings for you.
Correct.
He hired you as an intern at Lush.
Correct.
You remember that Mr. Donacourt overlooked Ivy League graduates for you.
Correct.
You assumed you didn't have to work as hard as everyone else.
Can you repeat that?
Objection.
I'm going to sustain that objection.
You received bad performance reviews.
Correct.
Multiple people reported your work as unsatisfactory.
Correct.
You complained to Mr. Donacourt.
I did.
But he wasn't very sympathetic, was he?
It wasn't.
He told you to work your problems out on your own?
I did.
And that made you angry.
I did.
You believe you were mistreated.
I do.
You felt betrayed.
Yes,
You were later fired from Lush
I was.
in December 2006.
Correct.
But at that time, you already had a job lined up at Terrace Greenery.
Yes.
And isn't it true that you applied to Terrace Greenery in early 2005, almost 2 years before you were fired?
Yes.
You thought applying at Terra would get Blake's go, wouldn't it?
Yes.
That's why you did it. You wanted to get back at Blake Donacourt. Your Honor, permission to address the witness and show opposing counsel was previously marked as Exhibit 5.
Granted.
Mr.
Actually, counsel, Exhibit 5 has not been admitted.
I believe does the plaintiff's witness have a copy of Exhibit 5?
No, I don't.
Can we share it for identification, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Mr. What is Exhibit 5?
Can you please repeat that? My audio cut out.
Mr. What is Exhibit 5?
This is a confidentially paper.
And this is your signature on Exhibit 5?
Correct.
Is this a true and accurate copy of the non-compete agreement you signed?
Yes.
Your Honor, defense offers Exhibit 5 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
So admitted.
Can you please look at paragraph 2?
Can you please zoom in? Yes, I can.
The employee will not at any time or in any manner, either directly or indirectly, divulge, disclose, reveal, or communicate any trade secret belonging to Lush to any third party, including but not limited to any competitor of Lush. Did I read paragraph 2 correctly?
You did.
Can we now share Exhibit 4? This email is an email you claimed to have received when you were employed at Lush.
Correct.
But it wasn't on Lush's email server when they produced documents to the plaintiff, was it?
No.
Objection, Your Honor, lack of personal knowledge.
Response?
Your Honor, the witness should have knowledge of the emails produced to her.
I'm going to sustain the objection. The witness may answer the question.
Would you like me to rephrase?
I'm sorry. Yes, I would.
You were never produced his email from Lush's email server, were you?
I wasn't.
You don't work for Lush now.
I don't.
You have no personal knowledge of what documents are on Lush's email server.
Correct.
This email isn't authentic, is it?
It is.
You created it.
Incorrect.
Well, assuming for now this email is authentic, it deals with the development of Drufo, correct?
Correct.
It discusses the company's plans to test Drufo. Did you hear my last question?
Oh yeah, I said correct. Sorry if you didn't hear me.
Oh, it discusses financial impacts of Drufo on the company.
Can you repeat that?
It discusses financial impacts of Drufo on the company.
Yes.
Drufo is patented, isn't it?
It is.
You took this email with you when you left your employment at Lush.
I did.
It contains highly confidential information.
It does.
And Drufo is a highly confidential trade secret.
Yes.
Terrana has a similar product.
It does.
Your Honor, at this time, defense renews its objection to Exhibit 4, and we move to strike it and all Mr.'s testimony relating to it.
Plaintiff's response?
As addressed in the objection earlier, this is a party opponent statement, and because it was addressed in a different court case, I don't see as how it can be removed here.
If this is a real trial, there's going to be more needed for authenticity. And we're getting into who's producing versus counsel versus parties. So I generally would have sustained the objection based on lack of proper authentication. But based on the fact that this is a mock trial, I'm going to allow the exhibit to stand. I'm not going to strike it from the record.
Ms. Langley, in this email you say you received, said that another study was going to be performed on Drufo, right?
Yes.
You didn't have all the access to the data that was analyzed by Lush researchers, did you?
I did not. I was an intern.
You have no personal knowledge about what the data from the second study showed, do you?
I don't.
You are simply speculating about what this email showed.
Yes.
You testify you reviewed a study relating to the impact of Drufo on rats. Is that correct?
That's correct.
This is Exhibit 3. You have no personal knowledge about whether Jerry Langley or anyone at Lush saw your journal.
Correct.
And as you sit here today, you cannot point to any scientific study showing a connection between exposure to Drufo in humans and cancer.
Yeah.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect, counsel?
Yes, Your Honor, a quick one. All right, Mr. Regarding this confidentiality agreement, okay, sorry, let me rephrase. You currently work at Terrace Greenery, correct?
Correct.
And how are you allowed to work at Terrace Greenery despite this confidentiality agreement?
I was sued by Lush Fertilizer.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Plaintiff, are you ready? The witness may step down. Plaintiff, are you ready to call your next witness?
Pardon? I couldn't hear your previous question.
I said the witness is excused and may step down. I ask the plaintiff if you're ready to call your next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. We would like to call Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
Dr. Rogers, remind you that you're already sworn in and under oath. And don't forget to unmute yourself.
Hello, Dr. Rogers. Can you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Yeah, my name is Dr. Casey Rogers, Rogers.
And Dr. Rogers, what is your relevance to this case?
I'm a researcher studying Drupal.
Would you tell us where it was that you went to school and earned your degrees?
I earned my Bachelor of Science degree in Agriculture and Entomology at CSU, and I earned my PhD in Agriculture, I earned my Bachelor in Science degree in Agriculture and Chemistry at CSU, and I earned my PhD in Agriculture and Entomology at UC Berkeley.
And what was your previous work experience, if any?
I worked as a research analyst for a multinational chemical company.
You said you do research. Would you explain a bit about what it is that you do within your current job?
Yeah, I work as a professor at UC Berkeley, teaching horticulture and entomology. You know, I gather research and results to send them to our,
And how long have you been doing that for?
For a couple of years.
You said you do research. Are there any specific articles you've written?
Yeah, I've written a few articles.
Can you tell us what those are?
Yeah, I've done a lot of articles, but some specific ones are the effects of Drupal on the human body that I wrote back in 2019.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, I would like to admit Casey Rogers as an expert due to the fact that he has demonstrated the requisite skills, knowledge, and education necessary for admission, as he has a PhD in agriculture and entomology, has worked for many years studying his fields in which he is well versed in, and has published multiple articles on the topic.
Any objection?
Can I first ask what he's being admitted as an expert in?
Oh, sorry, in agriculture.
And excuse me? Sorry.
You cut out.
Oh, he's being admitted as an expert in agriculture.
Any objection?
May I voir dire, Your Honor?
Yes, you may. Briefly.
Dr. Rogers, you aren't a cancer specialist, are you?
No, I'm not.
And you've never been to medical school, have you?
No, I have not.
You've never worked in a hospital either, have you?
No, I haven't.
And you've never had any education or training in diseases of the limb system, correct?
That is correct.
And you've never had any education or training in the treatment of cancer.
Yes, that is correct. I have not.
Your Honor, we don't have an objection to Dr. Rogers being admitted as an expert in agriculture, but we do ask for a limiting instruction on medical testimony or opinions. Due to Dr. Rogers' witness statement, we have concerns that Dr. Rogers will attempt to testify on the mechanisms of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, the symptoms, the survival rate, the treatment, or the diagnosis. And under Rule 702, an expert needs sufficient education or training in order to give these expert opinions, and Dr. Rogers does not have that qualifications.
I'm going to accept the tender of Dr. Rogers as an expert in agriculture with the appropriate limiting instruction on carcinogens and as a cancer expert.
Dr. Rogers, could you inform us as to what Drupal is?
Yeah, Drupal is a bonding agent that Lush specifically designed for their products to preserve that intact.
And is it all companies that use it or exclusively Lush Fertilizer?
As far as I know, it's only Lush Fertilizer that uses Drupal.
Why did you decide to conduct research on Drupal? Was there anything that raised concerns with you?
The reason I decided to conduct research on Drupal was because it was a new product, and I think personally that it was rushed to the market.
And you said that you conduct studies. Did you do any studies with regards to Drupal?
Sorry, what was that?
You said that you do research. Did you conduct any studies with regards to Drupal?
Yes, I've conducted multiple studies regarding to Drupal.
Was there any specific study that stood out to you?
Yes, I ran this one study that directly correlates with Drupal and its effects.
And what did that study entail?
In that study, I had three groups of people The first group being people who had never been exposed to Drupal, and the second group being people who were exposed to it every once in a while, like for example, people in their gardens, in their backyards. And in the third group, I had people that got exposed to it almost on a daily basis, like farmers and landscapers.
And in the context of this case, which group or category do you believe that our client Dakota Weirs would fall into?
I think Dakota would fall into the third category of people who were exposed to Drupal almost on a daily basis.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, you're hoping that the plaintiff is successful here, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
You want the door to be open for some more class action lawsuits involving Drupal, correct?
Sorry, what was that?
You want the door to be open for some class action lawsuits involving Drupal, correct?
Correct.
Because if there's more lawsuits, you could be hired more, correct?
That is true.
And that could mean a lot of money for you, couldn't it?
I mean, on top of the fact that I would earn money, the sole reason that I'm in this case is because I want to truly help people and not have people get hurt. But I also want to make like a word for her.
Okay, let's talk more about your study. You had 3 groups, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
You had your control group that had never been exposed to Drupal, right?
Yes.
And then you had one group that used products containing Drupal on occasion.
Yes.
You never defined occasional exposure, did you?
I said that it was people who used it occasionally, like for example, gardeners in their backyards and stuff.
But you never defined the specific time period that falls under occasional exposure, did you?
No, I did not. If you want.
So could occasional be once in a week?
Yes.
Could it be just in the summer?
Yeah.
Let's move on to your third group. Your third group was exposed to Drupal on a regular basis, correct?
Yes.
And this group included laborers who use fertilizer in the field and also gardeners, correct?
No, the people that I listed was landscapers and farmers.
Let's see. So all these people weren't all located in the same place, correct?
No, they were not.
Let's see. And Drupal wasn't the only chemical that these laborers were exposed to, was it?
No, it wasn't, because to keep it as a real study, they obviously you can't just limit them to just one item. But the only thing they all had in common was that they all used Drupal.
But they did use other products, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And these chemicals from these other products could have caused the cancer, correct?
Although that could be a viable thing, the only actual carcinogen that was observed in that study was Drupal.
But you have no knowledge whether the increase in cancer was caused by Drupal or these other products, do you?
I guess that could be true.
You said that Miss Weirs belonged to the prolonged exposure group, didn't you?
Yes, I did say that.
But didn't Miss Weirs only have exposure to Drupal during the summer?
No, she did not.
Are you saying that Miss Weirs worked year long?
I think so. She said, or they said that they worked during the summer.
Didn't Miss Weirs just testify that that her job at Haven Landscaping was a summer job?
Yes, that is what I just said.
Okay. Let's talk more about, when did some of the people in your prolonged exposure group develop cancer anyway?
Sorry, what?
Looking back at your prolonged exposure group, when did some of the people in your prolonged exposure group develop cancer anyway?
I mean, yeah, cancer can be developed either way, but non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is not genetic in any sort of way. It is chemical based and can only be affected by chemicals and caused.
Okay. As part of your study, you made some recommendations about how to mitigate and prevent exposure to Drupal, correct?
Wait, sorry, what was that?
As part of your study, you made some recommendations about how to mitigate and prevent exposure to Drupal, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
You suggested workers wear an N95 mask, didn't you?
I did.
And you suggested that they wear protective clothing, didn't you?
Yes, I did. But as I also said, this study was inconclusive and it was not proven whether or not wearing protective gear would protect against chemicals.
So your own study is inconclusive.
Yes, the study about whether or not wearing protective gear will affect the
Didn't you make these conclusions from your studies on Drufo?
No, there was a separate study that I did whether or not protective gear would affect the protection.
You promised to tell the truth in this case, correct?
Yes, I did.
And you gave a witness statement, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Can you please turn to page 27, lines 72? Actually, we'll just move on for the sake of time.
Okay.
Dakota Weirs didn't take those safety recommendations, did they?
No, they did not.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Can you redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Does plaintiff have any other witnesses to call?
No, Your Honor.
So the plaintiff Russ?
Yes, Your Honor, the plaintiff rests.
Defense, are you ready to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Skylar Weirs.
Ms. Weirs, to remind you, you are under oath.
Good morning. Please state your name and spell your last for the court.
Yes, hi, my name's Skylar Weirs. That's W-E-I-R-S.
Are you related to the plaintiff today?
Yes, I am. He's my twin brother.
And what is your current occupation?
Well, I'm currently an investigative journalist, freelance, and I also have a part-time job as a server. Got to pay the bills.
And as an investigative journalist, what types of articles have you written?
Well, recently, my supervisor actually asked me to write a series of articles on modern agri-tech. And I actually wrote an article about Drufo as a result of the series.
Have any of your articles ever been published?
Yes, my article on Drufo has been published and several others about modern agri-tech.
And where are these articles published?
Well, they're published for my magazine, The Rationalist.
And what types of articles does The Rationalist publish?
Well, at The Rationalist, we challenge readers to ask the difficult questions about science. Basically, we like to discourage pseudoscientific mass hysteria by analyzing research studies that are put out and writing articles about relevant scientific topics.
Now, is commercial agriculture one of the topics that you've researched?
Yes, it is.
Can you give an example?
Well, I think a good example for today's case would be the case of Monsanto. They were this company that was struck down by this massive PR campaign, even though their advancements in GMO technology could have helped a lot of people. Unfortunately, there are a lot of companies out there that are willing to pay a lot of money to strike down specific scientific advancements. And I believe this is sort of what Lush Fertilizer as a company is experiencing today.
And was the misinformation campaign against Monsanto successful?
Unfortunately, it was. And although their GMO technology could have helped a lot of farmers and discouraged malnutrition all over the globe, most farmers in different regions of the globe are still hesitant to use GMO technology.
And finally, Ms. Weirs, do you have any specific experience researching and writing about Lush Fertilizer and Drufo?
Yes, I spent a year researching for my series of articles on agri-tech. Mostly I use information from the National Department of Agriculture and the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture. And I researched their articles and studies, and that's what I used for my research for my article about Drufo.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. Your Honor, we offer Skylar Weirs as an expert in agribusiness, specifically about the impacts of exposure to fertilizers, including Drufo, on humans and the environment.
Plaintiff, any objection?
A brief body, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Ms. Weirs, you don't hold a college degree, correct?
No, I decided to forego college because my journalism career was really taking off for me.
I mean, you never attended college.
No, yeah, that's correct.
So, Ms. Weers, you've been researching Drufo for only a year.
Yes, and writing other articles on chemical engineering and modern agriculture.
So the extent of your education is a high school graduate, correct?
Oh, well, yes, my education, but I have done a lot of research on chemicals, including Drufo. So I would say I'm well educated on the subject.
All right. And Ms. Weers, you have never worked with the chemical itself, correct?
Well, no, I'm not a farmer, just a journalist, but I have done a lot of research on the people who would have been using farming chemicals and products.
And all those sources that you research are first-hand sources, correct?
Yes, they're from state departments usually.
So all of your articles are just second-hand sources.
Well, I draw from first-hand sources and research articles and research studies, but yes, my publications would be considered second-hand because I am writing about research done by scientists. I'm not a scientist myself.
So you've never conducted any tests on the chemical itself?
No, but I've studied a lot of scientific studies that do conduct tests on products like Drufo and other known, other products containing carcinogens or chemicals.
Well, you have no formal training either, right?
Training in what?
You have no formal training in being able to determine the qualities of agricultural products.
Well, no, I'm not a farmer or a scientist, but I do have a lot of experience in the field researching studies and chemicals.
So that's to know you don't have any training.
No, not specifically.
And you don't have any certifications either?
Certifications in what exactly?
Certifications in readily researching the properties of agricultural.
Well, I am a certified journalist, if you could say that, but no, I don't have any scientific certifications.
All right. Well, at this time, I object to Ms. Weers being entered as an expert as she does not demonstrate the requisite experience, education, and training to be admitted as an expert and be able to give an opinion about the safety of the fertilizer.
If this were real world, I would absolutely sustain that objection under Rule 702. However, for the purposes of the mock trial competition only, I will accept the tender of Ms. Weers as an expert.
Ms. Weers, you said that you reached some opinions in this case. What are those opinions?
Well, I have two opinions in the case today. One, yes, fertilizers and their products are always going to be somewhat dangerous, but Drufo is actually designed to be less harmful than products of competitors. And it is less harmful because it doesn't contain things like arsenic or glyphosate, which are known to be carcinogens. And secondly, today, I believe that it is Haven Landscaping that should be held responsible for my brother's diagnosis because they allowed him to work with a whole host of chemical products without any access to proper protective gear.
Now, pursuing to your first opinion, can you describe some of the risks from modern agricultural products like fertilizer?
Well, most fertilizers and grass seed products today are soaked in large amounts of synthetic nitrogen and also glyphosate and arsenic. Now, these things can seep into waterways and poison environments and humans. Furthermore, the people using the products are more likely to contract cancers because of arsenic and glyphosate, which are known carcinogens.
Can you elaborate on your opinion that Drufo lessens the risks to the environment and to humans?
Yes, well, the thing about Drufo is it's actually an effective pesticide. So the Lush fertilizer products only have to contain Drufo as opposed to arsenic and glyphosate. And even more, Drufo actually contains much less amount of nitrogen because Lush fertilizer products bond to grass more efficiently. This means they have to be less often applied and contain less synthetic nitrogen. Therefore, they have a lesser risk to humans and the environment.
Now, moving on to the plaintiff's claim about the carcinogenity of Drufo, are you aware of any study that has established a causal link between Drufo and cancer?
No, not with any level of certainty.
In your opinion, did the creation of Drufo help protect consumers?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, first of all, Lush Fertilizer as a company, they're a very charitable company. I believe they actually donate 10% of their profits to help prevent nitrogen contamination. And secondly, as I said, Drufo doesn't need to contain a lot of carcinogenic chemicals, unlike its competitors' products. So it's actually safer for humans to use.
And in your expert opinion, did Haven take the steps that they were supposed to protect your brother from the dangers of all these other fertilizers he was exposed to?
No, absolutely not. I love my brother a lot, but he was a teenager when he was using all these, a whole host of products that could be considered dangerous. Some of them not as safe as Drufo is, and Haven allowed him to use these products without gloves, without a mask, and it's frankly appalling.
And finally, Ms. Weirs, why are you testifying today?
Well, to be honest, I'm a journalist, so I'm here for the truth. A lot of people are saying that I'm testifying because of money or because I'm mad at my brother, but I'm not. I just want him to accuse the right company. And in this case, I just believe he's making the wrong choice.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. No further questions.
Amy Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Right. Ms. Weirs, nitrogen in fertilizers is carcinogenic, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Large amounts of synthetic nitrogen are very dangerous to the human body, usually because they can seep into waterways and they can contaminate users that are using it more frequently.
Right. Now, Lush fertilizer does contain nitrogen, right?
Yes, that is true. However, it, as a product, contains far less nitrogen than products of its competitors. This is what makes it so much safer. So really, there's no way to tell which product my brother's cancer could have been caused by.
Well, moving on, pesticides are, by your own definition, poison.
Yes, pesticides are usually poisonous because they contain arsenic and glyphosate. However, I will say in this case, Drufo is an effective pesticide, so Lush fertilizer products don't need to contain these sort of chemicals.
So Drufo is a pesticide then, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And Lush fertilizer contains Drufo?
Yes, in various amounts.
So then anyone who's using Lush fertilizer is being poisoned by Drufo with pesticide?
Well, I will say, as I've said, all chemical products have some amount of danger, but Drufo is a much safer product than other products which would have to contain more chemicals. Because Drufo acts as an effective pesticide, Lush fertilizer products don't need to contain these harmful chemicals. So it's actually a lot safer for use than other products.
Ms. Weirs, then that is a yes, that there still is risk held by Lush fertilizer containing Drufo as a pesticide.
Yes, but a far less risk than other products.
All right. Now, Ms. Weirs, I'm sure you've done research on Ms. Weirs, you've done research on the controversy surrounding Drufo safety. Is that correct?
Yes, some research.
And you found that research to be inconclusive?
In what manner?
The research, none of the research that you found has proven that Drufo is 100% safe.
Yes, that's correct. Well, Drufo does contain nitrogen, however, a much smaller amount. So I would say it's a lot safer than some of the other products my brother would have been using. That's why I'm here today. I don't know why my brother would accuse a product such safe as Drufo when he should be looking to the whole host of other products he was using on a daily basis.
Well, Ms. Rears, I didn't ask about the nitrogen in lush fertilizer. I asked if the research that you've done on Drufo's potential carcinogenic effects was inconclusive.
Well, no, that's incorrect. I have found no study with a high degree of probability that shows a causal link between Drufo and cancer.
Well, you haven't found any studies proving that Drufo doesn't cause cancer, correct? With 100% certainty.
Objection, Your Honor. I believe this question has been asked and answered multiple times.
I'm going to overrule the objection. She has not directly answered the question.
If you could please re-ask the question. I believe I'm a bit confused about what you're asking.
Yes, please restate the question, plaintiff.
My question is the research that you've done surrounding Drufo's controversy with its potential carcinogenic effects has been inconclusive, correct?
No, that's not correct. What is inconclusive is that there is no study that shows a causal link between Drufo and cancer.
Well, Ms. Weir, you are aware that you provided prior testimony, correct?
Yes.
Now, you're aware that you could have changed any facts, correct?
Yes.
All right, Ms. Weir, you're aware you provided in the form of an affidavit?
Yes.
All right, and all right, well, okay, should I, because for our technical difficulties, would it be best for me to share my screen or for? Your Honor, you're muted.
Thank you. Let's take a quick pause on the timer. Again, this is just a courtesy to opposing counsel because of technical issues. So if the Rose team could please pull up, what is it that you want pulled up?
I'd like Skylar Weir's affidavit on the page that includes lines 82 and 83.
Yes, Your Honor, 1 second. Give us 1 moment to pull it up.
Thank you, Rose team.
All right, Ms. Weir.
What line number did you want again?
Please follow along on line 82 to 83.
Yes.
And make sure the timer restarts.
All right, Ms. Weir, please read along while I read out loud. Now you say, the research on whether Drufo causes cancer like non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is inconclusive at best, correct?
Yes, that's correct. However, I believed you asked me about whether Drufo does not cause cancer.
My previous question was whether the research is done on Drufo's potential carcinogenic effects is inconclusive.
Yes, that's correct.
So, meaning there still is a chance that Drufo has cancer.
Yes, but what I was saying was I'm not aware of a study that has established that link, and that would be on line 86 and 87.
All right, now, Ms. Weir, moving on, I'd like to talk a little bit about your writing career. So, Ms. Weir, your writing generates income, is that correct?
Well, yes, but I am a freelance writer, so some of my articles haven't been as lucrative. That's why I had to take on a second job.
Well, Ms. Weir, you work at Applebee's just to be able to stay on your feet, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Unfair prejudice.
Response?
No response.
Then I'm going to sustain the objection.
All right. Well, Ms. Weers, you'd like for your writing to be able to be your main source of income, correct?
Yes, but unfortunately, I don't make as much money as you do, so that's why I have to maintain my second job.
All right. And you're here testifying for Lush Fertilizer, correct?
Well, yes, I'm here to share my findings, but I am on the side of Lush Fertilizer.
And you're testifying for this company that you greatly admire.
Objection, Your Honor. Improper character evidence, Rule 404.
Response?
Response, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, you cut out. I could not hear you.
No response.
On this one, for the purpose of the competition, I'm going to overrule the objection. Plus, Ms. Weir's already opened the door by testifying regarding the how it helps the community and donates a percentage of its profits.
All right, and Ms. You're testifying in front of the CEO of Lush Fertilizer, correct?
Yes, he's here today.
And you're aware that he's listening to every word of praise that you're giving his product?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Response?
Your Honor, it is not speculative that the CEO of Lush Fertilizer is listening to what is going on in this courtroom today. It is a fact.
And what is the basis for your determination that Lush is, that it's fact that they know what's going on in the courtroom?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Give me some additional argument as to, in support of your statement that it's fact that Lush knows what's going on in the courtroom today.
The CEO of Lush Fertilizer, Blake Doncourt, who is testifying today.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
All right, and to reiterate, you're aware that the CEO of Lush Fertilizer is listening to every word of praise that you're giving his product?
Well, I wouldn't exactly categorize it as praise. I'm here to share my findings of the truth. I am talking about Lush Fertilizer products, and I am aware that he's listening. However, I'm not specifically paid for my opinions, so I am giving my honest opinion today.
All right, well, Ms. Weir, I like to talk a little bit now about the reason that you're here today. So you write articles praising Lush, correct?
No, that's not correct. I did write an article about Drufo and its chemical properties, and I write articles about agritech. Lush Fertilizer was included in my my article about Drufo because it is a Lush Fertilizer chemical. However, I don't write articles for Lush or propaganda for Lush at all, no.
Well, Ms. Weir, do you believe that Lush Fertilizer is a revolutionary product?
Yes, I think it's a major scientific advancement, and that's why it's unfortunate that it's receiving so much criticism.
And you believe that Lush Fertilizer created an amazing product?
I'm sorry, forgive me, I didn't hear what you said.
You believe that Lush Fertilizer created an amazing product?
In Drufo, yes, absolutely. It's a chemical that's a lot safer than other chemicals that might be included in other fertilizers. And so I think it has a lot of potential to keep people away from the harms of chemical fertilizers.
So, Ms. Weir, you advocate for their product, correct?
Well, I advocate that their product is safer than the products of their competitors, but I am not a representative of Lush. I'm only here sharing my findings on the chemical.
All right, well, Ms. Weir, if Lush Fertilizer was proven to be carcinogenic in court today, you would be advocating for a product that harms your twin sibling?
Hypothetically, yes.
You'd be advocating for a product that is dangerous?
Well, no, I don't believe it's as dangerous as other products. That's why I'm here to share the truth of my findings on how Drufo actually helps people, not harms them.
Well, Ms. Weir, if it was proven in court today that Drufo was dangerous, you would be advocating for a dangerous product?
Yes, in a hypothetical situation.
All right, no further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Ms. Weir, you may step down. Defense, are you ready for your next witness? No audio, Ms. Carbone.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. Defense calls Blake Doncourt.
Mr. Doncourt, I remind you that you are already sworn in and under oath.
Good morning, Mr. Doncourt. Please state your full name and spell your last for the court.
Good morning. My name is Blake Don. Oh, sorry. Good morning. My name is Blake Doncourt. My last name is spelled Doncourt.
What's your occupation?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
What is your occupation?
I'm the Chief Executive Officer at Lush Fertilizer.
Did you start Lush Fertilizer?
Yes, I did. I built Lush Fertilizer from the ground up. It's an extremely prestigious company. Our fertilizer is used for governments, individuals, and businesses. And after all, part of the American dream, it does include lush, vibrant green grass. So,
Do you donate to any charities?
yes, we do. We actually donate 10% of our profits to specifically reducing the nitrogen footprint, as well as we lobby for environmental activism. We've received many prestigious awards for this, including the Steel Business Award and the Champions of the Earth Award.
Do you know why you're here today?
Yes, I do. The plaintiff is accusing me and my company of the carcinogenic effects that Mr. Weirs is facing. I completely understand what Ms. Weirs is going through. I sympathize with Ms. Weirs, and I wish Mr. Weirs Godspeed in recovering. However, my company is not responsible to any extent.
Moving on to a chemical in your product, do you know what is Drufo?
Yeah, Drufo is a bonding agent that Lush Fertilizer uses in their product. It essentially optimizes it. By that, I mean it increases the efficiency as well as it reduces the nitrogen footprint as a whole. So that's something we pride ourselves in.
Did the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, ever make findings that Drufo was at all harmful to public use?
No, not at all. As CEO of the company, it is my prerogative to keep in compliance with the EPA as well as the studies at hand. And not only were we in compliance, but no study indicated a causal link between Drufo and any carcinogenic effects that the plaintiff claims.
Are you aware of the study performed by the plaintiff's expert, Casey Rogers?
Yes, I am aware.
Do you believe that study was reliable?
Not at all. The study conducted by Dr. Rogers not only did it not establish a causal link, but it did not factor in any other variables. If we look at Dr. Williams' study, it was a multivariable study that was conducted that looked at the isolated relationship between Drufo and between carcinogenic effects. So there was no causal link there whatsoever that was established, and it was actually safe in accordance with all of the evidence at hand.
Moving on to a former employee of yours, do you know Carson Durst?
Yes, I do know Carson Durst.
Did you give her a job at Lush?
Oh, yes, I did give Ms. Durst a job at Lush. That is correct.
And when did she stop working at Lush?
Ms. Durst stopped working at Lush in 2006. Quite frankly, Ms. Durst got really lazy with her work and received many bad performance reviews. And what this was indicative of is the fact that she was no longer an important asset to either herself or my company. So I thought the only best option was to terminate her.
While working at Lush, did Ms. Durst sign a non-compete agreement?
Yes, that is correct.
And is this standard practice of yours?
Yes, absolutely.
Do you believe Ms. Durst broke her contract by working for the competitor?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We stipulate a 2-year period before any of our employees can actually work with with any competitor, specifically a competitor that uses fertilizer. Not only this, but Ms. Durst claims to have an email, which, by the way, she fabricated. Nonetheless, she presented this to Terra's Greenery and leaked our intellectual property and trade secrets.
Can we please pull up Exhibit 5? Can you please read paragraph 2?
Yes, so paragraph 2 is our non-disclosure covenant. The employee will not at any time or in any manner, either directly or indirectly, divulge, disclose, reveal, or communicate any trade secret belonging to Lush to any other third party, including but not limited to any competitor of Lush.
Thank you. Does Terrace Greenery have a similar product to Drupo?
Yes, Terrace Greenery does have a similar product to Drufo, and to my knowledge, Ms. Durst actually received quite a pay raise by Terrace Greenery as well. So clearly, it seems, as is evident by my knowledge, that Ms. Durst did in fact divulge our trade secrets to Terrace Greenery.
Now let me ask you about Exhibit 4. That's the email Ms. Durst claims to have received from Jerry Langley. Have you ever seen this email before today?
No, not at all. And if it was of any importance, Ms. Durst would have directly brought this to my attention, which they never did. Not only this, but the plaintiff's attorneys went through our email server and never found anything resembling this email to any extent. So it is completely fabricated and manufactured for Ms. Durst's own gain.
If Ms. Durst had any concerns whatsoever, did she ever bring them to your attention?
No, not at all. And that's part of the reason why I terminated Ms. Durst is the fact that they did not adequately perform their job. And if this was of so much importance, then it should have been brought directly to my attention. And this was never done. So if anybody's at fault here, it is Ms. Durst.
Finally, Mr. Doncourt, do you believe you are responsible for Dakota Weir's physical distress?
No, absolutely not. I believe the culprit in this case is Lush Fertilizer. As all evidence indicates, our product does not have anything necessarily wrong with it. There's no cause link between carcinogen and Drufo. However, Haven Landscaping allowed a 14-year-old boy to work with these chemicals while not adequately enforcing our safety recommendations on our product. So it's obvious that no, Lush Fertilizer is not responsible.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Doncourt, you said that baking your fertilizer was costly, correct?
Yes, well, as baking our product was expensive, of course, but it was not necessarily a problem for our company.
Was this the only way to alleviate the risk of carcinogenicity?
I don't believe that's in my witness statement. To my knowledge, it may have been a way to reduce the physical components, but
so if you baked your product, would this prevent people who use your product from being potentially harmed by the product?
Well, no, not necessarily at all, ma'am. I believe there's a fundamental delineation between harm and between the denotative definition of risk. If we actually want to look at the statistical relevance and the connotative definition of risk, they're fundamentally two different things. So harm and risk are not necessarily the same thing, as all evidence indicates. So if you want to talk about the physical reduction of the carcinogen, as all effective pesticides have, then sure, there is a statistically irrelevant amount of the reduction in carcinogen.
All right, so I intend to screen share Exhibit 8. Is there a way to do that?
Stop the clock for both sides.
We will screen share, Your Honor.
Thank you, Team Rose.
Mr. Doncourt, what is this
Hold on,
document?
I'm sorry, let's make sure the clock restarts. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Doncourt, what is this document?
Well, as my prerogative as CEO of the company, we always conduct cost-benefit as well as risk-benefit analysis. So this document specifically is a cost-benefit analysis that our company conducted in terms of what baking Drufo would have to do with our profits.
And would you say this is a fair and accurate copy of this document?
Yes.
Okay, so if you look at the baking costs in this exhibit, is it accurate to say that mathematical calculations permitting that your total net profit is around?
Objection, Your Honor.
Oh, I'm sorry, I messed it up. What is your objection?
I'm sorry, let me hear the basis for the objection, please.
This exhibit has not been entered into evidence.
Oh, I'm sorry. So at this time, we would like to offer the unmarked, fair, and accurate copy of Exhibit 8 into evidence.
Is there any objection to the introduction of the exhibit?
Yes, hearsay and best evidence.
As it is a record of regularly conducted activity, I believe that this exhibit is exempt from hearsay.
Based on that response, I am going to overrule the objection. Exhibit 8 is admitted.
So, Mr. Doncourt, if you look at the baking costs on Exhibit 8, is it accurate to say that your baking costs total to about $2.6 million?
Yes, that is correct.
And if we look at your net profit in the upper left corner, is it accurate to say that your net profits are around $19 million? I mean, sorry, the column in the middle of the document.
Yeah, wait, where are you looking?
The column in the middle of the document that is labeled net profit.
Yes, wait.
So 2 million is only 13% of 19 million, correct?
Yes.
So in your affidavit, on lines 108 and 109, you say that you needed that 13% to pay the capitalists who provided your company with seed funds. Is that accurate?
That is where the funds currently were allocated to. However, I will say that we donate more to charities than we do, or than the amount lost from baking Drufo. So money was not a problem for us at all. Currently, those profits did in fact go to our investors. But again, money was not a problem to us. But obviously, we want our investors well paid.
So this money could have gone into enhancing the safety of your customers and preventing potential risk.
No, not necessarily. If we look at the safety of our customers, let's just cross-apply Dr. Williams' study for a second. Again, we've conducted a multivariable analysis, multiple actually, that has suggested not only our product is safe, but there's no causal link between the carcinogenic effects that you are claiming and our chemical compound Drufo. So when you talk about safety, that is just blatantly inaccurate, ma'am.
You said that financially, you said that money is not a concern for you, correct?
Well, it was partially expensive, but as a large company, it was not comparatively a concern. If we look at how much we've donated to charities, it's actually more. So was it expensive? Yes, it was expensive, but it's something the company could handle.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Doncourt, you may step down. Defense, do you have any other witnesses to call?
Your Honor, the defense calls Dr. Devin Williams.
Dr. Williams, I'm going to remind you, you've already been sworn in and are under oath.
Good morning, Dr. Williams. Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Yes, I am Dr. Devin Williams, Williams.
Dr. Williams, what is your occupation?
I currently lead the research and development labs for Lush Fertilizer, and I also largely oversee environmental outcomes.
Were you asked by the defendants to give some expert opinions on this case?
Yes, I was.
Did you reach some opinions?
I definitely have.
Before we get to those opinions, can you please tell the jury about your educational background?
Of course, I got my BS, MS, and PhD all at Colorado State University in Fort Collins, and I got my post-PhD specialization education in pharmacotoxicology at the University of Utah.
Do you hold any certifications or accreditations?
Yes, I hold several across several different states.
Are you on the faculty of any academic institution?
Yes, I'm currently an assistant professor at the University of New Mexico College of Pharmacy.
What courses do you teach there?
Yes, I teach 3 wonderful courses. One is forensic toxicology, the second is principles of forensic toxicology, and the third is my favorite, toxicology of environmental and occupational chemicals. That one's very interesting.
Before you worked for Lush, have you had any other employment in toxicology?
Yes, for a brief stint, I worked at the Larimer County Office of the Chief Medical Examiner Toxicologist.
How long have you worked for Lush?
I've worked for Lush for a little over a decade now.
What are your duties there?
As I mentioned before, I am the lead for the research and development labs for Lush Fertilizer, which essentially means that I oversee the development and research for several Lush products. And I'm also tasked with overseeing the environmental outcomes of said products.
As part of this, your experience in training, do you have to reach conclusions about the effects of potentially toxic chemicals?
Yes, I am in fact a trained research toxicologist, which means that I am trained to understand how chemicals can affect the average person.
Do you also have to reach conclusions on the environment?
Yes, on somewhat of a daily basis.
The defense offers Dr. Williams as an expert in toxicology and the effect of DRUFO on humans and the environment.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
The witness is tendered as, I'm sorry, your tender of Dr. Williams as an expert is accepted.
My apologies. May I just ask what field Dr. Williams has been admitted as an expert in?
Yes. He has been admitted as an expert in toxicology and the effect of DRUFO on humans and the environment.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Dr. Williams, you said you reached some opinions. What are they?
Yes, I reached the opinion that at this moment, there is absolutely no valid evidence, which is to say that exposure to DRUFO can cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
What did you do or rely on to reach these opinions?
Well, to put it simply, we relied on statistics and scientific math to come to this conclusion.
Did you have any involvement in the development of DRUFO?
Yes, I came in within the first 2 years of the initial development of DRUFO. So you could say that I've been around for almost the entirety of its development.
What was your role in this development?
Well, when I initially came through, I came in as a technician to help keep the experiments on track.
Do you know why DRUFO was created?
Yes, DRUFO was created in order to address and establish a solution for one of the fundamental flaws of modern day fertilizers, which would be excess nitrogen.
Can you explain the issues with nitrogen in the environment?
Yes. Well, the thing about fertilizers is that once they are used, they are then later eaten and digested by bacteria. When the bacteria does this, an excess product of this is excess nitrogen. And this nitrogen can be a negative environmental effects for a several amount of reasons. But the one that we try to address the most is what happens when it is introduced into the local water streams. When it does do that, it can produce algae blossoms. And these are these can negatively affect both the environment and human beings.
How does DRUFO fit into all of this?
Well, DRUFO, as mentioned briefly before, is a bonding agent. It is essentially a glue, and what it allows us to do with our fertilizer is that less has to be used. With other fertilizers, you could say that almost double the amount of fertilizer has to be used in order to cover the same amount of area. But since DRUFO bonds the fertilizer to the plant or produce you're using the fertilizer on, you can use significantly less. And because of that, significantly less nitrogen is actually produced.
What does this mean for people?
Well, it means that people are getting the benefits that fertilizers bring to agriculture, along with the much minimized health defects that come with that fertilizer.
Is there still nitrogen in DRUFO?
Yes, there is, but in comparison to other fertilizers, it is so much less.
You said, has the U.S. Department of Agriculture approved the use of DRUFO?
Yes, they've seen how many positive effects that can come from this product.
You said you reached the opinion that DRUFO likely did not cause Dakota Weir's non-Hodgkin lymphoma. What is the basis for that opinion?
Well, the basis of that opinion is the in-house study that we ran at Lush Fertilizer. And through that study, we found that there was absolutely no statistical increase between people who use Lush fertilizer products and those who use other fertilizer products in actually getting non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Why are you comparing users of DRUFO to users of other fertilizers instead of non-users?
Well, to put it simply, because that's how science works. We have to make sure, especially when studying non-Hodgkin lymphoma, a cancer which is gotten through purely environmental means that we keep our variables to the bare minimum. So in trusting and experimenting between two different fertilizers, what we can really do is pinpoint what we are testing, which is TRUFO. If we hypothetically did test people who didn't use fertilizer, well, we completely pollute what we could actually get from that information. What we could instead get was that, well, hypothetically, that people who use fertilizers in general could have a statistical increase of getting non-Hodgkin lymphoma. But through using two different fertilizers, we can pinpoint DRUFO throughout our actual information.
Did you review a study performed by Dr. Casey Rogers?
Yes, sadly I did.
Can you give an opinion on the validity of that study?
Yes, my own opinion is that we really shouldn't even be considering their research since it is in no way valid.
What is wrong with Dr. Rogers' procedures?
There is so much that is incredibly wrong about their procedures that, from my perspective, it would be nice to even say it was amateurish. To start, they used completely different control groups. As I mentioned before, when testing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma especially, keeping our variables to a minimum was a necessity. And yet I hear and what I read is that they had control groups between people with completely different backgrounds. They had gardeners and farmers. You don't have to be a scientist to know that the environments between farmers and gardeners is extremely different. So what you can actually get from this is that hypothetically, maybe farmers have a greater chance of getting non-Hodgkin lymphoma than gardeners. That is not what you want to be testing, especially in a case as large as this. On top of that, the research was neither published in a scientific journal or replicated.
Dr. Rogers,
Your Honor, I request that this be a lay opinion, as Dr. Williams has not been admitted as an expert in research regarding DRUFO.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Williams is giving his opinion based on his own findings and his own expertise as a researcher and analysis on DRUFO. So he's more than qualified to give his opinion on the validity of Dr. Rogers' studies, because that is what his job is, to research DRUFO and other lush fertilizer products.
Overruled.
Dr. Rogers, Dr. Williams, do you need me to re-ask the question?
If you could, that would be very helpful.
Do your findings agree with Dr. Rogers' study?
Not at all. They're actually in complete contradiction with each other. Our own findings found that between fertilizers, the statistical increase is negligible, that you have the same rate of getting non-Hodgkin lymphoma regardless of the fertilizers you use.
In conclusion, do you believe there is any valid evidence that DRUFO causes non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
I believe that there is absolutely no valid evidence to say that exposure to DRUFO can cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross?
Your Honor, may I cross?
Yes.
Dr. Williams, you are aware that nitrogen is a carcinogen, correct?
Yes, I am aware of that fact.
And you also stated that DRUFO is an effective binding agent, correct?
Yes, it is essentially a glue.
So DRUFO, as in your own words, glues the fertilizer to plants.
Yes.
So essentially gluing nitrogen, a carcinogen, to a plant, correct?
Well, I see what you mean by that, but I personally would never put it in those kind of words.
So it binds nitrogen, again, a carcinogen, to a plant.
Well, as I mentioned before, DRUFO is attached to the fertilizer. So it's not just gluing nitrogen to a plant, it is gluing the fertilizer so that less of it has to be applied.
Well, nitrogen is within the fertilizer, correct?
Yes, but
nitrogen
in different.
Sorry, what did you say?
With several amount of different materials. It's not just nitrogen.
Sure, but again, DRUFO binds the fertilizer, which contains nitrogen, to the plant.
Yes, along with other materials within that fertilizer.
Is that a yes or no to my question?
If I have to give a yes or no, then yes.
Okay. And a plant is a living organism, yeah?
To my knowledge, yes.
And so are humans.
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Dr. Williams, you may step down. Do the defendants have any other witnesses to call?
The defense rests, Your Honor.
Thank you. Plaintiffs, are you prepared to proceed with your closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed when you are ready.
As the plaintiff, we must prove three things to you today: causation, negligence, and damages. It is inarguable that Dakota Weirs has damages. He can no longer play the piano, the pastime which he enjoyed so much, due to his pain that cripples him throughout his entire life from now on. He can no longer attend the university of his dreams. He has familial rifts, one of those being with his closest sibling, Skylar Weirs, who is testifying against him. All of this is because Lush failed to warn of the dangers that their product would cause. This is negligence. Lush conducted their own study and did their own research. What did they do? They kept it under wraps. Dr. Rogers' study found that there was a strong potential link that Drupa was carcinogenic. This demonstrates causation. The only thing Lush did do was create a warning label for their product. This told the user to wear protective clothing. Although it says that it is a warning label, it is merely a suggestion. This suggestion did not warn of the user potentially having their career upended, having to deal with physical pain throughout their life, having cancer, creating a familial rift between them and the rest of their family members. The only thing that Lush could do to prevent this was to bake their product, but they chose not to, despite 13% of their profits being a less than significant loss. As Blake Doncourt said, as we previously heard, that money was not a concern. It doesn't matter whether Lush was financially capable. They chose not to bake their product. 13% should have gone into enhancing the safety of their customers instead of paying off the debt that their company had. It did not go into enhancing customer safety. If Lush valued their customers' lives truly, they would have baked their product. Whether they felt they were financially capable or not is irrelevant. They truly believed that their customers' lives were worth more than 13%, they would have baked their product. They would have prevented these damages that Dakota Weirs faces today. They would have prevented damages that other users may gain had they not failed to warn. If they believed that their customers' lives were worth more than a very small percentage of their total profits. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Closing argument from the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time and attention. The plaintiff just tried to convince you that this case is about putting profits over people, but it's not. This is a case of a young man's cynical search for a deep pocket defendant. It is undisputed in this case that Dakota Weirs has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and that he is suffering, but emotion is not evidence. While working at Haven Landscaping, Mr. Weirs ignored the safety precautions listed on Lush fertilizer. He disregarded the Lush label that told him to wear a mask, long sleeves, and exposed skin. This directly relates to jury instruction number 8, which explains that the plaintiff is at fault if he failed to do something that reasonably careful people would do under the same or similar circumstances. So the question becomes, would a reasonably careful person wear a face mask or a long sleeve shirt when working around harsh fertilizers for hours on end every day? Yes, a reasonably careful person would. In order for Lush Fertilizer to be negligent, the plaintiff must prove that Mr. Weirs was one of the people that the defendant should reasonably have expected to use the product. Lush Fertilizer expected trained landscapers and agricultural workers to use their product with a sufficient personal protective equipment, not a 14-year-old boy without safety gear. I want to remind you of jury instruction number 3, which states that the plaintiff must prove that Lush Fertilizer knew that Drupa was potentially harmful and did not take reasonable care to warn the user of risk of harm or injury. Dr. Devin Williams, the head of Lush Fertilizer Research and Development Labs, testified that he led thorough investigations into Drufo and found that Drufo does not have an elevated risk of causing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma compared to other fertilizers. Because Lush found no potential risk to users, there was no need to label their product with a warning, as there was nothing to warn the user of. Carson Durst claims that she took part in a study that proved a causal link between Drufo and cancer. However, the only proof that this study exists is in Ms. Durst's testimony. There is absolutely no paper trail or record of this study ever existing. Blake Duncourt, the CEO of Lush, allowed the plaintiff to search through his email, and nothing related to a causal link between Drufo and cancer was found. Without a paper trail, the plaintiff cannot prevail. The only evidence of Drufo having a causal link to cancer is found in one study done by Casey Rogers. This study has never been published in a scientific journal, didn't follow reliable scientific protocols, didn't compare users of Drufo to users of other fertilizers, and was never peer-reviewed or replicated. Dr. Rogers didn't even review employment records and therefore doesn't know Mr. Weirs' level of exposure, so he cannot compare his study to Mr. Weirs' situation. In addition, Dr. Rogers hopes to build a career on testifying as an expert witness against Drufo companies based on his study. Profits over people. Defense claims that Blake Duncourt chose not to bake the Drufo because he would lose 6% of all profits. Why would Mr. Duncourt risk lives and his company for 6% of overall profits when he was in the position to donate 10% of all profits to a charity? Let's take a look back at jury instruction number 10, which says that any finding you make must be based on probabilities, not possibilities. The plaintiff can only tell you it's a possibility that Lush Fertilizer caused Dakota Weirs' cancer, because they don't know the other fertilizers she was exposed to while working at Haven. Even Dr. Rogers testified today that other chemicals and products could have caused Mr. Weirs' cancer. Haven Landscaping should be held accountable for its negligence and improper work conditions. Harsh fertilizers and landscaping chemicals were placed in the hands of 14-year-old Dakota Weirs. Lush Fertilizer has been studied. We know it's not as dangerous as other fertilizers. The host of other products that Haven allowed Dakota Weirs to use haven't been studied. Mr. Weirs' managers at Haven did not fulfill their responsibility to protect their employees because they made no effort to enforce safety precautions. Haven Landscaping should be grateful that their products weren't deep enough for Dakota Weirs, or they may be on the other side of this trial. Pursuant to the court's motion to limit damages, it is the plaintiff's responsibility to argue an amount of emotional damages to the jury. The plaintiff failed this responsibility. Without a set dollar amount of damages, the jury has no actual settlement to rule on. Ladies and gentlemen, Haven Landscaping may have failed their responsibility to protect Dakota Weirs, but it's not too late for you to fulfill your responsibility. Find for the defendant. Thank you.
Congratulations, everyone. Great work. Let's give our panelists a few minutes to finish their scoring. And once we get that done, we can do critique. One of the reasons, I don't know if people are approaching, there was no reservation for rebuttal, which is why I did not allow any rebuttal in closing. Thank you, plaintiffs. You may take a seat while we wait for scoring, and then we'll open it up to critique. Elizabeth, while we're waiting for scores to go in, how much time do we have for critiques?
Your Honor, we have as much time as you'd like for critiques. There's no time limit for that.
Oh, okay.
And I believe we have all scores submitted, so we can begin feedback.
All witnesses and counsel will probably want to put on their cameras for this. And then I guess start with the panelists. I don't know if Mr. Skelton wants to go first.
Sure, I'll go first. I'll try to keep it brief. I won't give individual feedback, so to speak. I'll try to keep it to teams and stuff I saw. I guess to introduce myself, I'm Daniel Skelton. I'm a deputy district attorney in Weld County. Waiting on getting back into trials with COVID. So this was a good experience seeing you guys handle the rules of evidence. So a couple things. Team Tulip, I really liked how you guys listened to your witnesses and were able to follow up. It's one of the difficult things for new attorneys to do, is to listen to a response and then come back and follow up to kind of clean it up. I think that's difficult, requires listening while also directing. So I was impressed by that. Team Rose, I liked your objections. I thought they were rather on point and pretty consistent with what you would see in an actual trial with those actual issues. A couple things I just wanted to talk about that I saw both teams do. One, in your opening, just get right to it. We know who you are at that point in a real trial. You've done jury selection already. You've already introduced yourself. Just get right to it. Get to your theme. If it's the plaintiffs that your client has suffered, if it's the defense that the law is on your side and they can't prove it via causation, so get right into it. I did want to talk about, just real briefly, I think it was the last plaintiff's witness. It was the study. The plaintiff never got into the study on direct, never really talked about it, which was a huge win for the defense. And then the defense on cross got into the study and kind of opened the door. So you really want to be listening. If you win on an objection or on a pre-trial issue and the other side can't go there, then you want to change your cross, change your line of questioning to make sure you don't go there, because they could have hit you on redirect and gotten all into the study because you opened the door. So it's a tough issue. It's something that is really learned by having to do it and get burned by it. But I think it's worth mentioning as well. So
Which study were you talking about?
I think it was the last plaintiff's witness. It was a study. Who's the last plaintiff's witness?
The Casey Rogers study?
Yeah, the Casey Rogers study. I don't think the plaintiff ever got into the connection of the actual carcinogen to increased Hodgkin's lymphoma. I don't think they ever got there. It was just a discussion about the control groups, and that was it. And then the defense kind of went there on cross when I don't think they needed to. So that's kind of all I have without taking up too much more of your time.
I'm muted. Mr. Piero, would you like to go next?
Sure, I'd be happy to. In addition to echoing what Mr. Skelton said, I kind of want to add a couple of things. Is when questioning someone, it was really nice to see you guys use transition sentences, things like, oh, I'm getting now to talk to a new line of questioning about this or that. It really helps jurors and other people to follow along what kind of things that you're going to be asking about next, without just it being a random series of questions. Good job repeating questions after an objection. Got to make that a habit, got to continue to do that. There's a little bit of, after an objection, there's always this awkward pause of, when do I continue? What do I do now? And things like that. That's something to continue to work on throughout this competition and throughout, if you guys pursue becoming attorneys. Just continue to repeat the question or just start over and reduce that transition time. It really helps the flow. And I understand the timing as far as wanting to move on after an objection, but sometimes you kind of got to stick to it, or if someone objects, have a response ready, or thinking on your feet and giving a good response is really shows that you know the rules of evidence very well. During closings, I thought it was really good that you guys brought up the testimony, quoting certain parts from what someone actually testified to. Overall, I think people need to speak slowly, but that's easy for me to say from a scoring panelist position, and not doing it, having to think on my feet at the moment. So I think that's just my feedback. I think overall is very good. You could tell that you guys had prepared for it and knew the case and the scientific part of the case, which makes things complicated. So.
Ms. Rivera?
Hi, I am Maribeth Rivera, and I'm actually freezing right now because the heater, my husband didn't turn the heater on, and I just moved to Colorado from Florida, but I've been practicing for 12 years. I thought, well, to piggyback off of everyone, but in addition to, the theme was really good. And I would say for cross-examination, by the way, so if I'm shaking, it's because I'm cold. For cross-examination, I would say to listen, and it happens to it happens to us attorneys as well. We have so much in our head and we want to get out that we sometimes are quick to ask and impatient to listen. Some of the questions might be not even within the scope on cross-examination, and they might be outside the scope of what was the previous testimony. I don't know when I don't remember when it happened, but I liked that the person whose evidence didn't get in wasn't flustered, and both the witness and the attorney just continued seamlessly, because that could be frustrating. However, I would recommend when an objection is sustained, don't give up so easily, and maybe ask to rephrase the question. And I don't know if it was because of timing, but I can tell you it happens in real life to attorneys too. They want to get out so much. I don't know the reason, which whoever it was didn't ask to rephrase the question, but it happens in real life too. Sometimes the attorneys are like, oh, whatever, I'm just going to keep going. I would say, overall it was good. One more note that I have with regards to the questions, sometimes breaking it up. In some instances, there were some long questions where the witness asked that it be stated again, but instead of breaking it up, it was just stated again in a long way. So you might want to consider slowing it down, breaking up the questions into smaller questions. I do have to say something about some of the witnesses were really persuasive and really good at their roles, which goes back to knowing the facts of the case. And I think that's about it, without repeating what everybody else said already said.
So I always feel embarrassed that I am allowed to fulfill this role because I'm not a judge in real life. I am a commercial litigator. So I've been doing this for almost 20 years. On your role, where I'm in front of a judge, I'm trying to argue my point. And I enjoy it for my practice being on this side because they hear how hard it is for judges. And one of the things that came up a couple of times today in the objections is the judge really is looking to you to give them a reason to sustain or overrule the objection. And for the purpose of competition, it's really hard because there's times when you could have gotten past an objection, you just didn't give me the right reason. And so I think it's helpful to have just some bullet points. If you want evidence in and you can anticipate you're going to get an objection, how are you going to get past that? There's a couple of times, look, it happens to all of us who have practiced. Judges will rule in ways that are right, and they're going to rule in ways that are wrong. And just don't back down. As Ms. Rivera said, don't back down on trying to get a point out. On the other hand, don't back down on your objections. Just because you get overruled once, don't give up. And one of the things I noted here, and I feel like you guys, when you had your objections, your gut was right. You knew that something shouldn't come in. You just might not have had the right reasons to keep it out, but listen to that gut. But kudos to all of you. You're clearly very well prepared. I want to thank both teams for professionalism, really. Like you're in high school, but the Tulip team, you had some technical issues that can really throw people off. So congratulations for just brushing it off and just moving forward. And then the Rose team, it is a competition. There are things that are supposed to happen, but thank you for just going with it and pulling up exhibits for the other side. That happens in the courtroom too. Like someone's going to have a technical issue and the judge will really impose more on the other side. and just going with that was great. So again, really great work, all of you. Clearly you worked really hard.
At this time, I just want to thank our volunteers so much for giving us your time this morning, our scoring panelists and our presiding judge. I hope you find this experience as fun, as engaging as I do. Judge Bell, you did a wonderful job, so thank you. And my coordinator has confirmed that all scores are in, so we may adjourn at your leisure.
Thank you. Enjoy your afternoon, guys.
Thank you.
Good luck in the second round.